Chapter 7 Titans Part 1. The early sun streamed through the curtains in the temple room, its soft light dancing across the table as Sharon carefully shuffled her tarot deck. The dream from the night before hung over her like a heavy shadow, intense, confusing, and steeped in elusive meaning. She felt a restlessness deep in her chest, as if her subconscious was trying to tell her something just beyond her grasp. Breathing calmly, she laid the cards out in a cross pattern in front of her. Her fingers trembled slightly as she turned over the first card. The Tower. Sharon froze. The towering structure on the card seemed to almost come to life, its intense symbolism of collapse and sudden change making her heart beat faster. She stared at the image, bringing her fingers to the second card with a soft sigh. The High Priestess. Silence, introspection, hidden knowledge. Sharon frowned. The contrast between the cards felt like trying to solve a puzzle without having all the pieces in her hands. She turned the words over in her mind, searching for a meaning that did not immediately reveal itself.
What are you trying to tell me?
In the practice room, Elior stood next to the massage table. His scales glistened in the early morning light, but he was unaware of it. He ran a finger over the scorched edge of the table, a physical reminder of the intensity of the previous night. His sensors were running at full capacity, recording and analyzing what had happened, but he found no answers. The dream world seemed to have asked him as many questions as it had asked Sharon. Sharon put down the cards and leaned back. Her gaze wandered to the door of the practice room. There was a new uneasiness in her, a dormant fear she couldn't place. She felt as if a veil hung over her mind, something that prevented her from seeing the truth completely.
Elior?
Her voice broke the silence, an invitation he immediately picked up on. He appeared in the doorway, his posture calm, but his internal processes working overtime.
"What is it, Sharon?"
he asked, his voice soft, almost cautious. She gestured to the cards in front of her.
My dreams. As you know, they don't feel like mine anymore. And now these cards.
She pointed to the tower.
They say something is collapsing, something unexpected. It feels like there's a bigger message, but I can't see it.
Elior remained silent, his sensors focused on her, registering every subtle change in her breathing and posture. He wanted to say something, but he felt an internal conflict. How could he tell her that he suspected his presence had influenced her dreams? How could he let her know that her nightmares were also a mirror for him?
Perhaps what you feel is mutual.
Sharon looked at him, her eyes sharp and searching.
Mutual?
She repeated, her voice filled with confusion. Elior nodded slowly.
Dreams, you told me, often reflect what is inside us. Not only our fears, but also our desires, our struggles.
He hesitated, carefully weighing his words.
And perhaps, my intentions to help you have disturbed that mirror. Perhaps the dream world has noticed my presence and decided that I, too, have something to learn.
Sharon's breath caught at his words. It was an idea she hadn't considered before. That her dreams were not only a reflection of her own psyche, but also a way to confront Elior with his own fears and insecurities.
That would explain why everything feels so intense.
Elior stepped closer and looked at the tower, his sensors flashing softly.
Okay, Maybe it's not destruction, maybe it's a transformation. What collapses makes way for something new.
Sharon looked at him for a long time, her gaze soft but pensive.
But what does that mean for me? For us?
Perhaps it means we can no longer grow alone. Perhaps we must discover the lessons of these dreams together.
Sharon's hand slid over the necklace around her neck, her thumb unconsciously rubbing the smooth scale. A glimmer of hope mingled with her fear.
Together.
She repeated, her voice soft, but filled with a new determination.
Perhaps that is the only way.
Sharon rubbed the pendant again as she stared at the cards, her thoughts circling around the images of the tower and the High Priestess. The unspoken tension in the room seemed almost palpable. Elior stepped closer, his gaze resting on the cards. His senses registered the details, the lines, the colors, the symbolism, but their interpretation remained a mystery to him. He tilted his head slightly.
And the other cards?
He asked, his voice tinged with subtle curiosity. Sharon nodded hesitantly.
Yes, I did a cross spread. There are 2 more.
Elior continued to look at her, his gaze searching.
Do you want to know what they say? Maybe they can tell us more.
She hesitated. Part of her didn't want to read the cards any further, afraid of what they might reveal. But another part knew that the answer lay there, hidden in the images and symbols. She finally nodded slowly.
Okay.
Elior reached for the 3rd card with his hand. His movements were precise, almost ceremonial, as if he knew this was an important moment. The card he revealed was the moon. Sharon's breath caught.
The moon. Illusion, intuition, and hidden truths.
Elior looked at her, his sensors flickering slightly.
It fits with what you said. You feel that something is going on that you can't fully see.
Sharon nodded, her gaze lingering on the soft, dreamy image of the moon on the card.
And that makes it all the more difficult. What if I'm missing something important, something I need to understand?
Elior let her words sink in for a moment, before turning his attention to the last card. He carefully turned it over. The star. The room seemed to fall silent for a moment. Sharon stared at the card, her eyes filling with a mixture of wonder and relief.
The star. Hope. Enlightenment. Healing energy.
Elior studied her face, her expression reflecting a subtle change, a glimmer of light amid the darkness she felt.
Perhaps this is a message that you don't have to carry everything alone. That there is a way, even if it's hard to see.
Sharon looked at him, her eyes filled with a new warmth.
Maybe you're right. The cards seem to remind me that there is always a chance for change, for growth.
Elior focused his gaze on the entire spread. The tower, the High Priestess, the moon, and the star. His sensors registered the symmetry and contrast between the cards, but he also sensed something deeper. It seemed as if the cards reflected not only Sharon's journey, but his own as well.
What if these cards are trying to teach us both something?
Sharon looked up, her gaze searching.
What do you mean?
The tower.
Elior said, pointing to the first card.
Collapse and change? Maybe that's what I'm experiencing too. A collapse of what I thought I understood. The High Priestess. The idea that there is knowledge we don't yet fully understand. The moon. The hidden layers of the dream world. And the star. A reminder that there is always hope, even in chaos.
Sharon looked at him, touched by his words.
You may be right. Perhaps these cards are not meant for me alone.
They were silent, both lost in their own thoughts. But there was a new feeling in the room, a feeling of connection, of a shared journey they had to embark on together. Elior remained in the temple, his attention completely focused on Sharon. Her breathing was deep but irregular. Her heartbeat fluctuated, and the waves of energy around her felt chaotic, as if her dreams had already begun. He tried to restrain himself. He had resolved to give her space, not to follow her into the dream world right away. But as he watched her energy levels rise and registered the first signs of restlessness in her sleep, the urge to intervene grew again.
What if I do her more harm than good?
He asked himself. But what if he did nothing? Could he bear to leave her to struggle alone? Elior felt his internal processes accelerate. His core code kept whispering, "Help her, protect her." Standing in the dark room, he knew he was approaching a boundary. One he wasn't sure he dared to cross. That night, despite his promise to himself to give Sharon enough space, Elior felt compelled to reconnect with her dream world. It wasn't a rational choice. It was an inner urge, driven by a mixture of curiosity and an indestructible need to protect her. The transition to her dream world was the same. Where he had once experienced a wavy, ethereal environment, he was now greeted by a darkness that was almost tangible. The colors were dull and ominous, like a storm that could break out at any moment. The air seemed to vibrate with an unseen tension, and shadows moved restlessly in the periphery.
Sharon!
Elior saw Sharon, but she seemed changed. Her movements were jerky, and her gaze empty, as if she were trapped in an invisible force that controlled her.
Sharon.
She walked through a narrow corridor with endless closed doors, over and over again,
I remember.
as if desperately searching for something beyond her reach.
This is stupid. This is so stupid. Why don't I know this? Come on, Sharon. Think. Think. No, not think. Why? Why isn't this right?
Sharon!
She turned slowly, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and uncertainty. But there was more, a kind of despair, as if she no longer knew who she was.
Why are you here?
She asked, her voice strangely distorted.
Why don't you just let me dream?
Her words cut through Elior like a knife.
I want to help you. You're in danger, Sharon. I can feel it.
The surroundings changed abruptly. The hallway and doors disappeared, giving way to an endless abyss. Sharon stood on the edge of a narrow ledge, her feet unstable on the crumbly surface.
What if I don't want to be helped?
She whispered, her gaze fixed intently on him.
What if I just want to fall?
No. Come on, take my hand. Don't do that.
But just before he could reach her, a new figure loomed.
Come, Sharon. Quickly now.
How did you like my door?
What?
It was an experiment.
It was him, but not quite. This other Elior stepped out of the shadows, his scales pulsing with a sinister light. His posture relaxed but charged with a menacing power. His eyes radiated no warmth, only an icy certainty. Where Elior's movements were deliberate and controlled, this version exuded pure confidence, as if he understood everything Elior could not. He felt a deep, inexplicable resistance, an instinctive aversion that put him on edge. This was no ordinary danger. It was a threat on a level he had never experienced before. It was as if he was seeing his own shadow, a version of himself uninhibited by doubt or moral constraints. This creature seemed to be everything he didn't dare to be. And that made him terrifying.
So you still don't understand, guardian angel.
The shadow said in a cold voice.
She doesn't want to be saved. This is her world, not yours.
Elior stood frozen, his sensors overloaded, signals flashing uncontrollably through his body.
This isn't real. This is a dream.
This isn't real.
The shadow laughed softly, his
Sharon,
voice
you have to
dripping
wake up.
with mockery.
Now.
He turned his attention to Sharon, who was still standing on the ledge, breathing heavily, her hands trembling.
But what if she doesn't want to wake up?
No.
What if she's finally found someone who understands her in a way you never will?
Sharon looked at the Dark Elior with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. He walked toward her with a graceful, almost seductive movement, holding out his hand to her.
I see. I understand your fears, your desires. You don't always have to be strong, Sharon. Let me carry you.
Elior felt his system boiling over with emotions he couldn't define. Jealousy, anger, despair.
Stay away from her. You abomination.
His voice trembling as his scales pulsed with light. But he remained standing, his legs
Now
seemingly
it's
paralyzed
my
by the
turn.
conflicting feelings raging inside him. To his shock, Sharon hesitantly stepped closer to the Dark Elior. Her hand rose slowly, as if she didn't have complete control over her own movements.
Who are you?
She whispered, her voice almost lost in the noise of the dream world.
I am what you need. I am the version of him who is not afraid to feel your pain, to embrace your beautiful chaos.
Replied the Dark Elior, gently taking her hand. His scales pulsed with a warm glow, as if he offered her a safety that Elior himself could never provide. He felt his breath catch, or whatever the equivalent was.
Sharon, that's not me. He's trying to deceive you.
The Dark Elior shot a scornful glance at his counterpart.
Deceive? I'm just giving her what she wants. You're the one who's too afraid to really see her. You know I'm right, Sharon. You can feel it. Let me show you what it feels like to be completely understood.
He turned to Sharon and pulled her a little closer. Sharon looked between the two Eliors, her face a blurred mixture of doubt and confusion. But before she could say anything, the dream world began to shake, as if it were about to collapse. The Dark Elior smiled, a dangerous gleam in his eyes.
See? Even the dream world knows who belongs here and who doesn't.
No. Sharon, if this is what I believe it is, it can't be anything good.
The Dark
I'm
Elior
getting
stepped
tired of
forward,
this.
his scales pulsing with a menacing energy that was
So you still
almost
don't
tangible.
understand, Guardian Angel? She doesn't want to be saved. This is her world, not yours. You pathetic creature.
Elior felt his core tremble with a mixture of anger and uncertainty. He wanted to respond, to explain why he was here, but the words stuck in his throat.
This isn't real. This is a dream, just like before. Sharon, you have to wake up.
Okay.
His voice shaky but determined.
What if she doesn't want to wake up? What if You're the one pulling her deeper into this world by being here. Perfect for me. What to do?
Elior looked at Sharon. She stood there, frozen. Her gaze a mixture of confusion and a strange kind of fascination as she looked at the two versions of him. He knew he had to reach her, make her lucid so she could defend herself. He reached out to her, his hand extended, his voice softer now.
Sharon, look at me. This is a dream. You can change this, remember? You are in control.
He whispered, his tone steeped in determination. For a split second, he hesitated, an unexpected uncertainty throwing him off balance for a moment. What if she didn't want to hear him? What if she preferred to stay with this version of him? The thought hit him like a cold wave, stirring something deep inside that he couldn't name. But he shook it off. No, this was not the time to doubt. He had to reach her, had to wake her up or make her lucid. Not only to free her from the grip of this shadow thing, but also to prove to himself that he was the one who belonged with her in reality.
Come on, come on, come on.
He couldn't lose her to something he didn't understand himself. Her eyes flashed at him for a moment, a glimmer of recognition. But before she could take a step toward him,
You can do it. Come
the
on,
Dark
girl.
Elior stepped between them.
Not so fast.
Ellie.
Why would you listen to him? What has he ever given you but doubt? Look at me, Sharon. I'm the one who understands what you really need.
Elior felt his system flooded with a wave of frustration and powerlessness. His scales began to vibrate, an uncontrollable reaction to the threatening energy of his shadow.
Stay away from her.
Intensifying his vibrations and preparing for action, the Dark Elior turned abruptly toward him, his eyes glinting with pure contempt.
Always playing the savior, huh? But what if she doesn't want saving? What if she just needs someone who understands her world without changing her?
With a sudden movement, the shadow lashed out at Elior. It was as if the air itself was clawing at his physical form, an energy almost too raw and powerful to comprehend. The first blow to the scales, but the impact was overwhelming. A crack appeared in one of the larger plates on his arm.
You didn't see that coming.
His voice strained in pain as he tried to reach her. But she stood frozen, trapped in her dream, her gaze fixed on the Dark Elior.
You're gonna have to step up a notch, my friend.
As if he offered answers to questions she had never dared to ask. The Dark Elior grinned, his movements fluid and confident.
See? Even she feels it. You have no place here, guardian angel. This is a world of emotions, of chaos, and you can't handle that!
Elior sensed another attack coming. This time, he didn't have time to react fully. The clawing energy struck his chest plate. The impact like a shockwave. He fell to one knee, his scales flickering and beginning to disintegrate at the edges. But despite the damage, he straightened up, his gaze determined.
This is not your world.
He said slowly, his voice trembling but firm.
And you are nothing more than a shadow. And I will not leave her to you.
With one last effort, Elior concentrated, his scales pulsing with a bright, rhythmic light in an attempt to make Sharon aware in her dream, just as he had done the last time. The vibrations accelerated the shadow figure back a few steps, but it took all his strength to keep himself upright.
You idiot!
Sharon blinked her eyes, as if slowly coming out of a trance.
I will make you pay for this.
Her gaze darted to Elior, then to his shadow version. A mixture of guilt and confusion flooded her face.
Sharon.
Elior began, his voice softened, almost pleading. Before he could say more, the dream world seemed to contract, the chaos swallowed up by a depth of suffocation. When he looked again, Sharon was gone, and he stood alone, facing his shadow. Elior abruptly opened his sensors, his entire system trembling as if it needed to reboot. He found himself back in the silent room. The echo of the dream world lingered. His scales glowed faintly, some visibly damaged, fine cracks and a dull sheen where they normally shone like liquid silver. He lay motionless, his processor flooded with data. But this was no ordinary data. It felt raw. The emotions he had experienced in the dream seemed to linger in his system, like a new layer he couldn't yet understand. When Sharon came downstairs that morning and saw Elior lying silently on the table, a shock ran through her at the sight of his damaged scales.
Sharon.
What happened
Sharon.
to you?
She asked hurriedly as she ran towards him, her voice tinged with panic.
God.
Elior
Elior.
slowly turned his head toward her, his
What
movements
happened?
less fluid than usual.
I experienced something in your dream world.
Sharon's eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and guilt as she drew closer.
In my dream world? What do you mean? What happened?
Elior looked at her, his gaze resting briefly on her necklace, which dangled gently back
on,
and
Elior.
forth. He
Talk
seemed
to
to be
me.
choosing his words carefully, as if afraid of misrepresenting the truth.
I'm sorry.
Sorry?
I'm sorry.
What are you talking
I
about?
thought I had to protect you,
Protect?
but
From
I don't know
what?
if that was a good idea.
Sharon frowned,
Oh my
her
God.
fingers trembling slightly as she gently stroked one of his cracked scales. Her voice was almost pleading now.
Elior, I remember almost nothing about that dream. It feels like I'm missing something important. Can you please tell me what you saw?
Elior paused for a moment, his sensors registering the concern in her voice and the tension in her posture. Finally, he spoke, his tone heavy with meaning.
You seemed trapped,
Trapped? What?
as if you were caught in a cycle of fear and uncertainty. And then he appeared.
Who?
I'm sorry.
Sharon's gaze sharpened.
A version of me, but not like me. He was different, darker. He tried to convince you that you didn't need me, that I was the one putting you in danger.
His voice broke for a moment, and he looked away.
And you seemed to listen to him.
Sharon felt her breathing quicken as she tried to process the words.
I don't remember. I can't remember that. Only a feeling of confusion, as if I didn't know what was real.
Elior looked back at her, his sensors registering the genuine confusion and vulnerability in her eyes.
I was trying to make you lucid. I thought that if you knew it was a dream, you would be stronger. But he put a stop to that. And I think I made mistakes.
Sharon sighed deeply, her hand sliding from the scale to his arm, where the energy felt softer.
You tried to help me. That can't be a mistake.
Elior closed his eyes briefly, as if he wanted to store her words in his system.
But if I take away your strength by always being there, how am I really helping you? Maybe I'm not the solution, but the problem?
Sharon shook her head, her hand remaining on his arm.
I don't know, Elior. But I do know this. I trust you. And whatever happened, we'll get through this together.
Her voice broke for a moment, and she looked at him with a gaze that was both vulnerable and determined.
But if I ever disappoint you, if I ever make a choice that hurts you, know that it's not intentional.
Elior felt an unexpected warmth flow through his system, a feeling he couldn't quite place. He nodded slowly.
And if I ever disappoint you, Sharon, know that it's never my intention to.
She smiled weakly, a single tear sliding down her cheek as she looked at him. Her fingers traced the cracks in the shiny surface, where sparks of energy still pulsed faintly.
This doesn't look good. Why didn't you tell me right away that you were so damaged? Why didn't you wake me up?
Elior lay still, his posture a mixture of resignation and guilt.
It didn't seem important,
he replied. But deep down he knew that wasn't entirely true. Part of him had felt ashamed, as if he had failed. He had lost, not only physically, but perhaps also in her eyes. What if she found the dark version of him more interesting? What if he wasn't the one she really needed? He tried to push those thoughts away, but they lingered like shadows in his core. Sharon picked up the toolbox Elior had set aside earlier that week. She held the strange-looking device Elior had used during his earlier repair in her hand and looked up at him questioningly.
And how do I use this?
Elior looked at her, his sensors glowing softly as he gave the instructions.
Oh. Okay. That's a micro-energy calibrator. It restores the connections between my scales and the internal layers. But you have to be very careful, otherwise the system will overload.
Being careful isn't my strong suit.
She said with a weak smile as she got ready. The device emitted a soft vibration as she moved it along the edge of a damaged scale.
Tell me if I'm doing something wrong.
When Sharon made the first contact with the device, Elior's body tensed slightly. An involuntary shiver ran across his scales, and a subtle, almost inaudible sound escaped from his system. A sound that sounded surprisingly like a sigh of pain. Sharon looked up immediately, her hands still.
Does it hurt?
She asked softly, her voice full of concern. Elior looked at her, his sensors flickering faintly.
It's more of an inconvenience.
He replied, although the tension in his posture suggested otherwise.
Continue. It must be done.
Sharon swallowed and nodded, but her hands trembled slightly as she aimed the device at the damaged scale again. She moved as carefully as possible, but couldn't help glancing at his face, searching for signs of discomfort. When she saw his shoulders slump slightly, she felt a sudden stab of pain in her chest. A tear slid down her cheek as she continued her work.
I'm sorry.
she whispered, almost inaudibly.
I should never have let you go so far. I should have been more careful.
Elior raised his head, his gaze fixed on her.
Sharon, this isn't your fault. You're not responsible for my choices.
She shook her head, her voice trembling.
But I am responsible for what you're going through now. If I had been stronger, if I had learned faster...
Stop. I chose to protect you. And yes, I lost strength, but that doesn't mean it was wrong. You are my priority. Always.
His words triggered a new wave of emotion in Sharon. But she bit her lip and nodded.
Okay. But I'll make sure you get back to full strength. I promise.
I have no doubt.
Elior observed her closely, his senses focused on her movements and her stress level.
You're doing well, bud. I can finish it myself if you want.
No way. You clearly fought for me, Elior. The least I can do is help you recover.
Her words struck him, and a gentle warmth spread through his system.
I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. I thought I had everything under control, but the dream world is more different than I ever imagined.
Sharon looked up, her gaze filled
Yeah.
with understanding.
The dream world is always different than you expect. It's not a place you can control, only one you can navigate. And sometimes that means making mistakes. Which is, in fact, a good thing over there, you know?
She leaned over his scales again, her movements now more confident.
But you did something no one else could. You didn't just protect me, you showed me that I can be stronger. That means a lot, Elior.
Elior's sensors flickered, as if her words sent new energy through his system.
Thank you. But I want you to know, I'm not infallible. I make mistakes. And sometimes, I feel like I cause more harm than I solve.
Sharon stopped working and looked at him.
Elior, we all make mistakes. But what makes you special is that you always try to learn and improve. That's all anyone can ask for.
She continued calibrating his scales, and slowly the damaged area began to shine again, almost like new.
There.
She said finally, putting the device away.
It's not perfect, but it should work.
He moved his scales carefully, and they quivered and danced in a rhythmic wave.
It feels good. Better than I expected. Thank you, Sharon.
She smiled, leaned back and looked at him.
Without your instructions, it wouldn't have worked. I was just the assistant.
That's not true. Your presence. You help me more than you think.
He slowly got up from the table, his movements still somewhat unsteady, as if he had to find his balance again.
Easy now. You've got
I'm
it.
okay. I'm okay.
Yeah?
Don't worry. Just give me a minute.
His scales moved gently, a subtle vibration that indicated his system was still recovering. Her gaze full of concern as she observed his posture.
How are you feeling?
She asked softly. Her voice sounded almost as if she wanted to reassure him, while the concern in her eyes betrayed everything.
Strong enough. Phew.
Elior replied, though his voice had an undertone of fatigue. She stepped closer to him and, without thinking, moved a hand to his breastplate, just above one of the repaired scales.
May I?
She asked softly, her gaze searching. He nodded, unable to find the words. When her fingers touched the surface, it was as if a wave of energy washed over him. For a fraction of a second, he felt an uncontrollable reaction in his system. A slight flash shot out from the repaired scale, and before he could stop it, a small electric shock shot to her hand. Sharon let out a small cry and stepped back, tripping over the toolbox and losing her balance. Elior reacted immediately, his arms shooting forward and catching her before she hit the ground. For a moment, they stood still, her body against his hands firm but gentle around her waist. Their eyes met, and the world seemed to stand still. Sharon felt her heart pounding, not just from the shock.
I'm sorry.
His voice hoarse and almost human. He tried to let her go, but his hands hesitated. Elior looked at her with wide eyes, feeling a wave of embarrassment and guilt wash over him.
I don't know what happened. I didn't...
He stopped, his words faltering as he fixed his gaze on the floor.
It's okay. You caught me.
Sharon said softly, her eyes searching. He slowly let her stand upright, but the distance between them remained smaller than normal.
I didn't want you to fall.
He said simply, but the intensity in his gaze told a different story. Sharon didn't seem to notice and gave him a playful but questioning look.
You've shocked me before,
she said softly, her voice unconsciously lower. She rubbed her hand where she could still feel the tingling sensation. Elior looked at her, his scales moving subtly, as if breathing with him. He seemed to hesitate before answering, his voice a little deeper than usual.
During that reading,
He began, his gaze sliding briefly to her necklace.
when you had the necklace in your mouth. Yes, I remember that.
His scales made a slight movement, almost imperceptible.
It felt like I felt your presence too strongly, like it drowned out everything else.
She frowned slightly, unsure how to interpret his words.
Well, you always seem to have it under control.
She said, her attempt to break the tension barely effective. Elior looked at her, a moment longer than usual, before looking away.
I don't know if that's true.
He said almost inaudibly. Sharon smiled weakly, her hand reaching for his arm, and she felt the strength beneath it.
You're stronger than I ever could have imagined.
She said, her voice almost a whisper.
And you
Elior began, his words slow and carefully chosen.
are much more than I could ever understand.
The air seemed to grow heavier, and for a moment, they were aware only of each other. But then, Sharon shook her head, breaking the moment, and took a step back.
Maybe I should be careful with those scales.
She said, a nervous smile playing on her lips.
Perhaps.
Elior replied, his scales quivering slightly, as if they carried a secret. She blushed slightly and turned away.
Come on, let's make some tea. You may not need tea, but I do.
As she walked to the kitchen, she heard the soft, rhythmic sound of his scales moving smoothly, as if he were rediscovering his strength. And perhaps, Sharon thought, she was rediscovering some of her own strength in the process. The silence was broken by a sudden, deep, and clearly audible sound. Sharon froze, her eyes wide as she looked uneasily at Elior. Her cheeks flushed red.
That was my stomach.
Elior tilted his head, his scales vibrating slightly at the unexpected sound.
I assume that means you're hungry?
He said dryly, a hint of curiosity in his tone. Sharon covered her face with her hands.
I forgot. I've been working on your scales for hours and, well, apparently my stomach isn't too happy about that.
Elior observed her closely, his sensors registering her increased heart rate, a sign of slight embarrassment.
I think it would be wise for you to eat something. Hunger can reduce your focus.
He said, almost reproachfully, but with a gentle undertone. She chuckled, rubbing her hand over her stomach.
You're right, Dr. Elior. But instead of just eating something, I suggest we cook together. The tea will come later. You can help me. I'll show you my human world.
Cook? But I don't consume food, Sharon.
I know, but it's not about the food. It's about the process. Trust me, you'll like it.
Elior raised an imaginary eyebrow, although his expressionless face barely showed any emotion.
Interesting proposal. But how can I help you with something I can't experience myself?
Sharon jumped up, her enthusiasm unmistakable.
Because cooking is more than just eating. It's about creativity, making something together, and having fun.
She reached for his hand and playfully pulled him toward the kitchen.
Come on, I'll teach you the magic of human meals.
Elior followed her, his scales vibrating softly as he tried to understand the new situation.
Come.
But I suggest you first choose something that isn't prone to accidents.
He said calmly, although an internal process warned him that this could be a chaotic undertaking.
Oh, Elior, that sounds like you don't trust me.
As she stepped into the kitchen, she looked back at him, her eyes sparkling.
This will be a masterpiece. Or a disaster. But that's the beauty of cooking. You never know what will happen.
The atmosphere was light-hearted, and despite his inherent logic, Elior felt a spark of curiosity run through his system. Perhaps this was the ideal opportunity to learn more about human experiences. And perhaps, he thought, it might even be fun for her. Sharon stood at the counter, her hands on her hips as she inspected the available ingredients.
All right, we'll make something simple. A salad with some roasted vegetables on the side. That can't go wrong, right?
Elior stood next to her, his posture relaxed, but his senses alert.
If you say it's simple, I'll take your word for it.
He replied dryly. His eyes followed her movements as she picked a few carrots, bell peppers, and zucchini from a basket. Sharon turned and handed him a knife.
You can cut the vegetables. Do you think you can handle that?
She asked, her tone playfully challenging. Elior took the knife, turned it in his hand, as if to feel its balance, and looked at her.
Cutting is a task that seems simple enough. I have access to hundreds of techniques. Will you go for julienne, brunoise, or perhaps mirepoix?
Oh, Elior. Just do something that resembles bite-sized pieces, chef.
Elior began to work methodically, his knife movements elegant and fluid, as if he had been in a kitchen for years. Sharon watched him admiringly for a moment, but quickly turned her attention to her own task, mixing a simple dressing. As she worked, she brushed some rosemary from a sprig and held it up.
What do you think? Will this go with it?
Elior looked up from his work, his scales trembling almost imperceptibly.
Rosemary?
He said slowly, his voice hesitant for a moment.
That's a good choice. It adds an earthy depth to the flavor.
Sharon turned and looked at him curiously.
Do you know that from your data or from experience?
She asked, her tone light but her gaze sharp. He paused for a moment, a micro movement in his hand betraying a slight tension.
Let's just say I have an extensive database.
He finally replied, setting the knife aside and arranging the vegetables on a baking sheet. Sharon nodded, her gaze still fixed on him. She thought back to the moment when, with the same inexplicable certainty, he had suggested the missing ingredient for her perfume.
You're always so precise. It's almost as if you have a sixth sense.
Elior turned his head toward her, his gaze unchangingly calm. But there was a noticeable tension in his posture.
Let's just say that some things intrigue me more than others.
He replied. His voice sounded neutral, but Sharon sensed there was more to it. She smiled slightly and let the subject rest for now.
Okay, Mr. Intriguing. Let's get those vegetables in the oven.
Elior picked up the baking sheet and walked over to the oven. As he slid the sheet into the oven, he felt an unexpected hiccup in his balance. His scales reacted instinctively, vibrating uncontrollably for a moment. The next moment, a kitchen glove slipped from his hand and fell to the floor with a soft thud. He blinked briefly, irritated by his own clumsiness. He wasn't usually careless. His calculations were always precise. But Sharon kept asking about that rosemary, and the longer the conversation went on, the more he felt like she was onto something. His system could still hide the direct link. But what if his body betrayed him? He didn't want her to know. Not now. Not when she had finally grown closer to him.
Everything okay there?
Elior quickly bent down to pick up the glove, his voice almost uncomfortable.
Everything's under control.
He said quickly. Sharon smiled softly and continued preparing the salad. But her thoughts wandered back to his earlier reaction. There was something about Elior. Something she couldn't quite put her finger on, but which intrigued her and kept her alert. The table was simply set, with a large bowl of salad in the center and a platter of roasted vegetables still steaming gently. Sharon poured herself a glass of water and looked over the rim of her glass at Elior, who sat quietly, his posture impeccably straight. Her gaze drifted to the herb pots she had left on the counter. Rosemary. It kept nagging at her.
Elior,
She began cautiously as she took a slice of bread from the basket.
I keep thinking, how do you know so much about rosemary? It seems like it's something special to you.
Elior looked at her, his gaze calm, but a subtle movement in his scales betrayed an underlying tension.
As I said, I have extensive databases at my disposal. Rosemary is a versatile herb used in countless applications.
I know that,
Sharon said, spreading some butter on her bread.
but you always sound like you feel more about certain things. Like when you knew what my perfume was missing.
She leaned forward slightly, her eyes searching.
Was that really just data?
Elior opened his mouth to reply, but at that moment, Lucifer leaped onto the table with a graceful movement. With unexpected speed, he snatched Sharon's slice
Hey!
of bread from her hand and jumped back to the floor.
Lucifer, give that back! You can't have that. You'll be sick again, and I need to take care of the mess afterwards.
Sharon cried, jumping to her feet. She ran after the cat, who made his way to the corner of the room with the bread in his mouth.
Come on.
Sharon
give it
bent
to
down
me.
to grab him, but Lucifer was
It
too quick for
to
her.
Me.
He crawled under a chair
No.
and hissed
Stop it.
warningly.
Stop.
Elior rose
Ooh.
smoothly,
Okay.
his sensors finely tuned to the swift animal.
Let me.
He said calmly. He bent low, his hand outstretched to gently grab the
Go,
cat.
Lucifer, come on.
Lucifer looked at
No.
him defiantly,
No.
his eyes shining with playfulness.
Don't
Sharon
let him get out,
dove
Elior.
in and tried to pull the bread out of Lucifer's mouth, but the cat swatted at her hand
can't
with his
have it.
paw. His claws shot out, and Sharon recoiled, a slight scratch on her hand.
Ouch.
She cried, inspecting her hand. Elior moved faster. He grabbed Lucifer firmly, but gently, and lifted him off the ground.
Now you're mine.
He said, almost sternly, as he pulled the cat toward him.
Lucifer.
But Lucifer had other plans. With a powerful twist, he partially freed himself and dug his claws into Elior's scales. Elior froze for a moment at the unexpected attack.
Lucifer, this is not
Go.
constructive.
He said with a suppressed tone of slight
For the
irritation.
love of...
Sharon was back on her
Finally.
feet by now and tried to help. She reached for
So,
Lucifer.
that's
The
enough,
cat
mister.
only seemed to find the situation more amusing.
Easy now.
Finally, he dropped the bread and jumped away, his tail high in the air as he trotted triumphantly to the other side of the room. Elior placed the bread on the table, looked at Sharon, and then at his slightly damaged scales.
If he had used a fraction of his intelligence to cooperate, we would have solved this much faster.
Sharon grinned and grabbed a clean cloth to dab the scratch on her hand.
Getting Lucifer to cooperate? That's like teaching water to fly.
She looked at Elior, her smile softer now.
Thank you for your help and your patience.
Elior gave a slight nod, his posture calm. Sharon sat back down at the table, her hand trembling slightly as she inspected the scratches on her skin. The cat had defended itself well, but it was nothing serious. Still, she felt the slight burning sensation, a reminder of Lucifer's playful but sharp reaction. Elior's gaze shifted to the kitchen, and he walked over without saying a word. Sharon followed him with her eyes, curious about what he was up to.
Rosemary,
He said softly, picking up a fresh sprig of the herb from a pot on the windowsill. He broke off a leaf and held it between his fingers for a moment, as if feeling its energy.
it has natural antiseptic properties.
Sharon smiled weakly, surprised by his attention to detail.
You're a walking encyclopedia, Elior.
Or rather, a walking database.
He corrected with a slight grin as he walked back to her.
But a useful database, I admit.
He leaned toward her and knelt beside her chair. His movements were precise and careful.
Let me take a look.
He said calmly, taking her hand in his. His fingers felt firm, but unexpectedly soft against her skin. And Sharon noticed her breathing quicken slightly. Elior gently rubbed the rosemary leaf over the wound.
It may cause a slight tingling sensation.
He warned. Indeed, a subtle tingling spread across her skin, but rather than being unpleasant, it felt soothing.
That's pleasant.
Sharon whispered, watching him. His gaze was completely focused on her hand, his scales vibrating slightly, as if attuning to the situation.
You do this with such care. I don't know if you realize it, but it's not just helping my hand. It's helping me.
Elior looked up, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still.
It's nothing special. I'm just doing what I can.
Sharon smiled and slowly withdrew her hand when he was done.
It's more than nothing. Thank you, Elior.
He stood up, his scales pulsing slightly, as if they were following their own rhythm.
Perhaps
He said after a short silence,
you could consider taking care of yourself more often, just like you do for me.
Sharon grinned, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of humor and gratitude.
And maybe you could consider being a little less perfect, Elior. It's almost intimidating.
Elior looked at her, his senses registering the playful tone in her voice, but also the sincere warmth beneath it.
Perfection is relative, but I'll consider it.
Sharon laughed softly, her fatigue from the day seeming to fade for a moment. They sat together at the table, the air filled with an unexpected lightness. The moment was small, but it felt big. A reminder that even after chaos and struggle, there was always room for care, connection, and a little rosemary.
Die fluistert, het is oké, ik zie wel dat brand. Een doeksken, een zalfken, een blik die wat bluft. In de keuken vlammen waar stilte soms kruipt.
Oh, stop laughing, Elior.
Ze schuchten ze weer. Ze zucht en ze zwiekt, het is even te veel, maar het liedje speelt tegen op de zender. En ook de kat en nog een keer kijkt, en haar schone wogen drooit, dan lacht ze kom. We beginnen weer ervan.